tip of the hat from Dr. Facilier.
It's hard to believe it's been about 15 years since Princess and the Frog was released, the last major original 2D animated Disney film, discounting Winnie the Pooh from 2011, where talk about this film has gone up yet again, mainly due to the forthcoming openings of Tiana's Bayou Adventure ride that is happening at Walt Disney World and Disneyland that many opinions speak of. And because of the time and season, it only feels right to finally talk more about the film Princess and the Frog in detail, one that happens to be not quite the best Disney film that has been produced, but certainly one of a decent quality that represented how they still should value traditional animated films, last spearheaded by John Lasseter in the middle of the time that the studio switched to 3D more often, with films like Bolt and Meet the Robinsons in years prior and Tangled coming the year after, where you probably couldn't see them do this story in any other way to really capture the mood of New Orleans at the time that has such a beautiful rich history to it that only this certain style could truly capture. But besides the story quality that can feel a bit off in some ways since they turn into frogs for the most part of their journey, the fact that still remains that still makes it great is the fact it contains one of the best Disney villains created in the 21st century, one that we all know as Dr. Facilier, the shadow man who plots to take over New Orleans with his voodoo magic and friends on the other side to make his poor little life rich and prosperous and so powerful. And his entire design from the get-go truly brings out someone who is worthy of a top spot in the pantheon of Disney villains that the brand that many fans well regard today, continuing a hard-hitting proof that they need them now more than ever. Not that we need evil foes who practice and dangerous voodoo magic in our lives personally, but in the spicy attitude that they bring that causes destruction under the guise of helping poor unfortunate souls navigate their way through life. And it's all thanks to the amazing voice talents of Keith David giving off this smooth silky voice to a charlatan who plays and preys on the weak-minded, having such great quality that is fun and free with it. It is truly one of an unmistakable nature, being one of my most favorite voice actors whose work I have truly admired, including in Disney's own Gargoyles, where it only felt natural that you could see him playing a Disney villain like Facilier, who has this mysterious background that remains relatively unknown other than the shrunken head of his apparent royal mother. And Facilier is a true perfect fit to contrast Tiana as a character who works his way up from the bottom but uses a darker tool to swindle his way to the top rather than honest work that she was raised herself through the ideas of her own father. Which, in the context of all things involved, since we don't know much about our own villain's past, is where things have to be focused on in this part of the film. Because when we get to know Tiana, we know her relationship with her father is strong, loving and admiring each other for the day that they get their own restaurant built off of his back-aching work, a belief that resonates throughout the film using the age-old familiar concept of wishing upon a star, but in this case, taking action to actually see it through in order for a dream to come true, all of which plays into the importance of love that impacts us all and why Tiana always thinks of him when regarding her own dream in the future, knowing deep down what really matters even when she gets lost in the hard-working definition her mother sees as a little too far, leaving no room for herself to breathe or live life to its fullest. That her greatest fault as a character is leaving no time for herself in the pursuit of a dream she took to heart, reflecting on the bustle of New Orleans itself when we get the bigger picture of their city in between the two jobs that she works, finally showcasing us a glimpse at our villain, granting his own wishes to people with a twist for his own money, similar in vein to other heinous individuals like Ursula who made deals that benefit them for their own greater good. That we get to see a picture of a person who moreover gets to be used to make what she needs, contrasted with another one who uses to get what he wants. Hence comes his first scene where you get to see him give hair to a guy who actually turns him into a hairy Bigfoot, but how regardless of making a dime on the unsuspecting citizen or tourist, he always gets upstaged by the wealth of society with the likes of Big Daddy, whom is regarded as the most powerful man in the city and father to Tiana's friend Charlotte, giving way more money to a kid on a street selling newspapers than they ever did tricking people on a dime that his own shadow points out at the large money gap. Which of course is another interesting trait we have to mention about his own character, where his own shadow has a personality of his own and is a trusty sidekick to Facilier. This is also a brilliant move for his character because we know well in Disney's past that it happened to other characters with Peter Pan and his shadow, whom also acts as a sidekick to Peter. This helps us reaffirm the darker aspects of the character without focusing on them specifically, knowing where they can be in multiple locations that surround your own actions, and now being more malicious, able to showcase the true inner emotions of that that singular person. However, as we learn more about him as a villain who practices dark voodoo magic, he actually doesn't have complete control over such magic like other Disney antagonists would have, whether it be witches or sorcerers of any type, and it's more through the method of persuading people to make deals with him and his friends who actually hold all the cards of said magic. That control comes over the best person who knows how best to manipulate people over their worst traits, their wants and desires, just in the case of the lazy Prince Naveen, who willingly takes the opportunity since he too just wants access to the money that his own parents had but just locked them out of. You know, the scene that leads us to his fantastic song called Friends on the Other Side, using tarot cards to explain their past and showcase their potential future. Or, like many others would actually describe, showcasing a future he wants them to see that aligns with his plans. A facade that demonstrates a simple want disguised by a dangerous desire of be careful of what you wish for. Dragging in Lawrence in to help taking care of the prince to disguise as him when he becomes the frog that Tiana has to deal with. And what I like about this song that truly makes it different from all the other Disney villain songs in the past and the present is that it mostly consists of him talking or singing speaking. Not quite sure how you describe it since I'm not smart in music obviously, but how it demonstrates the appearances of not being as they seem. Sure, he appears as helping them, lending a poor sinner's hand, but he's actually helping himself, using the prince to work his way up to Big Daddy and the power of New Orleans that others can eventually feast on. Most villain songs consist of characters of what they have and what they want selfishly, and making friends on the other side perfectly disguises the reality to a hero of the story. Of course, Naveen is stupid, don't get me wrong, since he was raised himself that way, but he becomes more scary and effective than other villain songs when it's like that, when the hero is goaded in their wants and desires when reality comes crashing down to give them the opposite. Which, actually, to be fair, thinking about all this, is still similar to Poor Unfortunate Souls by Ursula, making it the other song where she actually talks to Ariel in the middle about what she has to do. Considering the fact that both films do come from the minds of the same directors, where there are more of songs that are made to be talking because they're manipulating the main characters in the film. And they can't do that by regular means possible of singing a song because they're both there. I mean, it's still not the best villain song, don't get me wrong on that, but you get what I mean. Just like how Tiana sang Almost There earlier, having no time for events outside of work life, but how this social trap gets wider to catch her to realize this world too. I mean, even though Lawrence is helping out, being the fake Naveen under Facilier's disguise, he still doesn't fully accept such plans of evil since he was just tired of being dragged under Naveen's boot, yet how he becomes the underling to the overall plan of a man who wants power and control, fearful of breaking talismans that he made to sell his soul to such desires. Yes, he appears to be the devil making deals with unsuspecting guests, but even too does the devil showcase fear for what they did to claim his fake position at the top. Or even though he appears mostly as a smooth showman who has a sly personality in the background, he actually is a great anger-prone, fearful individual who takes anything by any means necessary, including disregarding any being's life if it meant to favor him in the end. He is more cruel and bitter due to his upbringing, yet still fair to others who were raised similar to him in poorer conditions, that at any moment, if it were to break, he could really lose his life. So he cannot let one moment slip up to his plan like Naveen escaping alive. So he has to work his way to manipulate the side of good for self-indulgence and the side of evil for self-preservation. A villain who is not truly safe if anyone finds out who he really is, yet how it allows him to command them with such power since he knows what they want even if one entity actually has the upper hand. Yet how the talisman still is the key between life and death in all of these scenarios despite inching closer to a goal of killing Big Daddy through a voodoo doll when all the forces of good manage to escape his grasp, which unfortunately leads to the events of the death of Ray, to showcase how important he is as a light in a darker world managing to damage the shadow demons, but how Facilier proves his worth as a villain, stopping him by stomping the fatal blow. That of course this happens because these characters were preventing his plan from going through, but how he's willing to crush those who are clearly beneath him like any human would to a bug. Yet another proof to how great he is as a villain if they can dive into their murderous intent or vices after learning of a whole passionate story of one character with a big or small lens with good hearts, compared to modern versions of other villainous characters that veered a little off these evil path towards unclear pictures of right and wrong. Yet at the end of all things, all villains are still susceptible to embarrassing defeats when its greatest strength becomes its greatest weakness when he finally becomes face to face with Tiana, using her desires against her to give back the talisman. I mean, we know exactly what he would do instead of her real dream, but it still is a very convincing moment when he brings her dreams to life. That was animated earlier separately to appear like this Art Deco style wish from Almost There, but now how it appears again with Facilier's manipulations of being real with her in the same exact dress. That he's able to showcase this because he understands her, where it physically looks as if it is so easy for Tiana to give in to such desires, knowing the wants of a person that we've always discussed through Facilier's character to contrast both of them, also reminding her of the naysayers who thought otherwise and falsely relating to her poor upbringing. Her father tirelessly worked to make this restaurant a reality for them to live a good life, to have what they always wanted this whole time, for the pains of back-breaking work that is enough to convince a loving daughter to make it a reality right then and now, to fully appease their path, to remind them that their future is better because of them. Yet how that same love reminds her that he carried the love of his family throughout as the most important thing to his life, finally saying that this is what he needed the most, that love is more important to value than the work or your dreams when a heart knows where life is, preventing Facilier from telling otherwise, confirming it becomes its greatest weakness. Where compared in seeing the value in wants that he desired that he knew others could be manipulated for in their own way, Tiana always saw the need that people always had that gave their life true meaning that Facilier could never see, since he gave that part of himself up for deals with the devils and demons on the other side, where if it weren't for his shadow, he still would have failed immediately, yet how it still became delayed to do so since he underestimated his foes constantly for that same love being the creatures that can be regarded as slimy or hateful when they actually are not, where it brilliantly brings up the tunes of his own song in the background as the souls of the damned drag him back to pay his debt, bargaining for something he knows he can't escape, showcasing the true facade of a scared, fearful little man who never achieved much in his life and threw it all away in the trash. It is a huge representation of payment for all sins that he caused to the souls of New Orleans, dragging them down when he decided to drag his own soul under for the cost of it all, letting him dig his own grave in a horrified fate, finally becoming dead to this realm. Where his legacy leaves a mark of one who tried to represent what people desired without knowing what that desire truly is. A surface view idea that never showed the true inner heart of a character, like Naveen learned from the beginning, that managed to be his villain's ultimate undoing. To realize the lengths that some are willing to go if it meant all the power and the world to them, but understanding nothing of where that power should come and why it is so in the first place, valuing the true love of where life leads you. And for those reasons and the design of an illustrious foe with Keith David's charming voice, he truly lives on as a memorable popular Disney villain for all of us to enjoy. One that has clearly celebrated as much fame as those who preceded him decades prior and will join them for the future in the decades that are still to follow. And what this all really meant was how traditional animated Disney villains are the best since they allowed themselves to be designed with such evil intent that can be truly enjoyed for and still needed in the future in the never-ending pursuit of great art. And with that all said, I'm all done. Goodbye.